got the quarterback of the Kansas State Wildcats, baseball champion Will Howard.
So excited to announce Kansas City Sports Network's new soccer channel. They're taking advantage of a look that they utilized earlier in the game to show the jet sweep motion.
It's a live edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise.
You kind of root for guys to have those moments, and that was certainly a big moment.
Welcome into Mizzou, That's Who, your podcast for Missouri Athletics here on KC Sports Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the Border War Podcast.
Welcome back. Another episode of Ain't No Season Podcast.
You are listening to KC Sports Network, proudly presented by Emprise Bank.
It's a live game preview edition of the KC Laboratory presented by Emprise Bank, member FDIC, our dear friends and our partners in Possible. They are absolutely wonderful. It's wonderful working with them. And this is going to be one of the most wonderful episodes of all because it's just me and Craig today. Just kidding. No, Maddie's in Florida. We're just taking turns making trips to Florida, I guess.
No, we're not. I'm not on that schedule, thanks. I'm good.
I'm not going.
I'm not going.
I'm
can't
staying.
make me.
Yeah, you're doing all right where you're at, Craig.
Yeah, I'm all right, bud.
But yeah, Maddie's on vacay. He saw the 3 Thursdays I took off in a row and said, you know what? I'm going to take one too. Yeah. So good for him. I'm happy for him. It is me and Craig today, game preview edition of the lab. It's been, the last time we did a game preview was for a little game called the Super Bowl.
How'd that work out? I can't. Oh, right. Your Kansas City Chiefs became the 3-time world champions. Oh, gosh, that was good.
How many times has Mahomes won a Super Bowl? What is he?
Oh, that would be 2 times.
Oh, okay. All right, cool. So the modern era is a 2-time. Got it. Okay. Well, thanks everybody that's hanging out with us. We appreciate you. We're really excited to be talking about this game. It's crazy that we're to this point already. And, I feel like, before we get into this too much, like there's probably definitely a little bit of a vibe that's different for Chiefs fans coming off of a Super Bowl where a lot of the roster is back. And, it's not like there's just these big, giant, overarching storylines that you're going to be gleaning from game one or from the preseason in general. But I think the good thing is the question marks that you have can show themselves enough in these games because a lot of the discourse is about unproven players, and preseason's the opportunity to to kind of let those reveal themselves and, see some of these young guys getting snaps. It's funny that, Craig, the Chiefs sped up the timeline last year by winning the whole thing. But it's still a young team with a lot of young players on both sides of the ball.
Yeah, it's weird. We said last year that if the NFL messed around and let them make another AFC Championship game, it was over. Because they were taking clear steps towards getting younger, towards, the next era of Patrick Mahomes and the Chiefs football, and they went ahead and won the whole damn thing. They reset the timeline in a big way to the point where now the conversation's about dynasty, which Patrick Mahomes is trying to very artfully sweep under the rug. It's like, hey, listen, we are far from there. We're not there yet. We're working on it, that sort of thing. That's good. But those can start in earnest. And a lot of that comes from the fact that they have continually invested in the draft in smart ways, added good football players, guys that dropped like a Trey Smith, identified 7th rounders like an Isaiah Pacheco who ends up being your leading rusher last year. There's lots of things like that we look at and we're like, boy, a lot of smart moves. You start to learn to lean into some of the moves that Brett Veach has made. And this year they added so many high athletic profile, high ceiling players that this might be one of the most excited, basically since Patrick Mahomes was drafted. This might be the most excited that I've been to just kind of see these guys on the field, see how they move, and see how they look against real competition.
I think that's kind of how I was feeling last year with some of these rookies, but I think it's manifested itself even more. I think there's more intensity to all those emotions and feelings and excitement because I think we think about that rookie class last year, and they don't stop getting better. They don't stop improving, or at least all of them won't, right? Last year was the start of something, not the finished product. They just happened to win a Super Bowl amidst their development. But I'm excited about both sides of the ball. We're going to start with the offensive side about just some of the storylines and some of the things that we really want to watch in this first preseason game. And I don't think we're going to get a big sample size of this, but we will start with the first team. And I think one of the biggest things is the offensive tackles. We are getting an introduction to the offensive tackles for this team. 2 new bookends on the offensive line. Obviously, a fantastic interior offensive line. There's a lot of buzz and optimism about the tackles. I think I said this a couple weeks ago on the show. No news is good news. I think when it comes to the discourse around the tackle position, and you really haven't seen a ton of people, saying something about the tackles, getting beat too much. So I'm just very excited. I'm excited to see Jawan Taylor in the Chiefs uniform, but also I'm just excited to see where Donovan Smith is at this point in his career, coming off an injury.
Boy, that I think most of us are just going to be glued to that left tackle spot when, for the couple of series that he'll probably play. I'm just guessing, what we haven't heard the full Andy Reid rigmarole about how much those guys are going to play, which never holds true. It's usually like a series, maybe 2 in the first game there. But the offensive line tends to stay on the field a little bit longer, and it makes some sense. They want to get a look at these guys. They want to see how they move when they're going against real competition here. When you watch camp, they're not hitting. They're not throwing everything that they can at some of these guys, especially the pass rushers and the offensive tackles. If they did every day, they would be beat to hell at the end of all of this. They are definitely taking something off of it. You know who's not going to take anything off of it? Peyton Turner. Isaiah Foskey, these young defensive ends that are going to be coming at the Kansas City Chiefs, they're going to be trying to bring everything they can because they want to show that they're deserving of a starting spot, that they are deserving of a spot in the rotation there. So they're going to be giving Donovan Smith everything they can, Jawan Taylor everything they can. If Donovan Smith moves well and looks good against these guys, which mostly going to be, more power players, things like that, using their length to try and win, not necessarily big speed rushers that the New Orleans Saints have here, but those types of players, if he looks good against them, that's a big positive step. Like that's going to help everybody to maybe feel pretty good about where it is and where they are in the equation, because the next guy, and Kent, I'm just going to segue right into this. The next guy that everybody's going to be watching is Wanya Morris. Is he ready? Is he ready to take that step? Where is he going to play? Is he going to play both sides? Because he has been playing, mixing in with the first team at left tackle and at right tackle. Where do we see him primarily? That's going to be a good view on where this team feels that they really think that he's going to slot in. If he plays both sides, I think that they're trying to work him out so that they can maybe not keep another offensive tackle on this roster and make the roster construction decisions a little bit easier because they feel confident in Wanya Morris's ability to be the full-time swing tackle.
And I think the important thing with Wanya Morris is this, knock on wood, is probably the biggest sample size you're going to see of him this season unless there's injuries on the offensive line. I think Donovan Smith's quite likely to hold down that position for the entirety of the year. And if that's the case, Wanya Morris gets a redshirt year to continue to work and develop as a swing tackle, continue to develop some reps on the left side of that offensive line. I'm going to get there in a second. But this might be the biggest sample size you get of him. And if that's the case, I am quite fascinated to see his work at left tackle. He played it right. Here's the funny thing. Here's the funny thing. Anton Robinson's playing right tackle for the Jacksonville Jaguars.
How hilarious is that the guy that was preventing Wanya Morris from playing left tackle at Oklahoma, and now both teams were like, we're gonna swap him. We're gonna swap him here. I
was talking to our buddy Joshua Briscoe today, and on this someone about this, and it would just be, there's so many things with this team that, like, it's kind of like last year. If this team hits with this young defense, look out, right? If the Chiefs are able to find a serviceable left tackle for the future, in the third round. That's just another one of those huge wins if they're able to get Wanya Morris in a position where they have, their bookends secured for the next 3 seasons after this one. Like, that is a underlying storyline to see. Like, he doesn't have to be a finished product on, August 13th. But if he's showing signs of growth and development over this preseason, it's going to be fun discourse to have from a roster building perspective, from a draft perspective, all that stuff. If we don't see him, but we see him play well in the preseason.
If we see him play well in the preseason, like there is still Lucas Niang hype. Like, it's still floating around out there because people went, wow, he probably should have been a second round pick. He ends up going in the third round, doesn't play that first year, opts out for, the COVID year and everything, comes back, gets injured. I think people think there's something there, and this offensive line keeps going back to him. So there's something there. There's some hope there. If Wanya Morris shows out in preseason game 1, like, looks really good, again, New Orleans Saints, they're no chumps at defensive line. Hell, Tano Passigno is listed as a third stringer on this defensive line. That's a great 6th or 5th or 6th, defensive end coming off of there. Wanya Morris is going to see quality rushers that have been in this league for a little while that are trying to prove themselves. If he goes out there and he looks good and moves well, especially off of that left side, the hype train's going to go just nuts. It's going to go nuts because, and to Kent's point, he may not ever play this year. Like, it may just be preseason spot duty, filling in for injury and stuff like that, but never a full-time starter or anything. And the hype train going into next year based on a game, this weekend may be bigger than we've seen of any of the offensive linemen that we've seen drafted by the Chiefs so far yet.
Wanya Morris is the guy I'm second most excited to see in training camp. The one I'm most excited about, we'll talk about right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Feel free to leave those 5-star reviews. Helps us grow the channel. Helps more Chiefs fans find KC Sports Network. We have a lot of great content that's going to be on this channel during the season. It's ramping up. We're all getting quite excited, and it's really fun to be previewing a sort of football game. I said the guy I'm second most excited about to watch was Wanya Morris. Got done talking about him. The guy I'm most excited to watch is Rashee Rice, the rookie wide receiver. And I know this is perfect time to have the wide receiver discourse. And just so you know, we haven't mentioned Patrick Mahomes in the first 13 minutes of this show. I'm contractually obligated to make sure to mention him. So Patrick LeVon Mahomes, that might be it, because everything else is more built around everything else.
Yeah.
Rashee Rice, I think he's looked great in what we've seen of him in training camp. And it's, he's a tough eval, obviously, because last year he played hurt and played through a lot. And so some of the separation skills weren't there. So, there was some questions about a little bit of the explosiveness, but watching him, catching the ball away from his frame, winning at the catch point, all that kind of stuff. Those were all things that have shown up on his tape in college and have shown up in some ways in tape on St. Joseph. So some of the positive indicators are there, but you're also seeing some of the explosion, the ability on the jet sweep that we got on the KCSN channel that you can check out. Good change of direction. And he's a guy that, he's not the same player as Juju. The build reminds me of Juju when I look at him. And I'm very excited to see where he's at in his process and whether or not he's going to be a factor in this team's offense. I think he will be. It's just a matter of what kind of factor. I think this is the first step in us kind of getting an idea of what's his role going to look like. How does he look? Does he look ready to take on a big burden?
I'm very curious to see how much he plays. That's one of those that the Chiefs, when they want guys to maybe get a few more reps. They want to see what they've got a little bit more, see how they handle some of the physicality of the NFL game going up against, bigger corners that they're not used to playing against. Certainly he's going up against them in camp, but like those guys, again, aren't slugging it out every single day. I'm curious to see how much they want him to play, how many targets they're going to try and force feed him. Whether, again, it may not be Patrick Mahomes, it may be Blaine Gabbert that is force feeding him targets a little bit just to see how he handles winning at the catch point still, trying to play through contact, trying to do some of the stuff at the NFL level that is just going to be a lot more physical and a lot more difficult than his skill set has currently had to go up against. And if they let him run for a little while, and I think people will read into that quite a bit, and especially since he's been kind of mixing in, early twos, but late ones sort of deal there, definitely on the fringe with the first team. If they pull him off the field quickly, I think we can start to talk about how they are hiding Rashee Rice a little bit, because as it stands, there's highlights and stuff like that. They're showing some stuff. They definitely have Justin Ross and Deneric Prince and Skyy Moore stuff that they are really focusing on. And yet the comments coming out of camp from everybody that I've talked to is, hey, Rashee Rice looks great. And if he looks that great and they're not hyping him up, are they keeping it close to the vest? Are they trying to have something, again, we saw the Chiefs do this with Kareem Hunt. Yeah, he took opportunity there with like Spencer Ware going down, but they had a clear and defined plan for him to step in and have a role in this offense. Do we see something like that for Rashee Rice? So I'm actually watching the number of snaps here, because him going out there playing against physical NFL competition for the first time, even if he doesn't look great, it's not doom and gloom. I'm not worried about it at all. Like, it's fine. Grow into the role. We've talked about this draft class needing some time. For some of these guys, that's fine. If they don't let him play very much, that is a very big indicator that they feel super, super comfortable with him. I am also really amped to watch Skyy Moore. Like, when the defensive backs and defensive coordinator are coming out and saying, hey, listen, this is a lot harder than it was last year, when they're going up against him, that's really good. So many questions about this wide receiver group, the depth, the top end, how, potentially bad it could be. There could be a lot of opportunity for a second-year player that knows the offense a little bit better and has looked pretty good in camp to step in and claim a bigger share of the targets than maybe we even think about. So this may not be something that we see too much on Sunday, but I'm going to be watching how he's moving a little bit, how he's gelling in the offense a little bit. They're going to be calling basic concepts, but spacing, the way that he's playing off of corners leverages, lots of eyes on him, because it does sound like he's made possibly the biggest step from year one to year two.
Yeah, I mean, you hear some of the stuff in some of the discourse about, his ability to pick the playbook up, and, he was having to be told where to go early, and he felt more and more comfortable as the season went on. And I mean, it is a real thing, the whole Andy Reid rookie. I mean, it's real. I mean,
especially when you're fumbling punts, it's real. That's
a
confidence thing, man.
Yeah. So just being able to play with freedom and play to the strengths that he has, I think just getting to see what that actually looks like will be huge. Like, I think we talked about it when it happened. I think that touchdown was big for him in the Super Bowl. I know he was wide open, but it's big for him to, score a touchdown, his first career touchdown, get that monkey off his back and get that kind of confidence. And hopefully it springboards, more opportunities, and in him kind of just taking a big step. The funny thing we don't talk about here, Craig, yet, it's also Justin Ross's first preseason game. Like, we haven't seen Justin Ross play yet in a Chiefs uniform. Like, we've seen him practice. We've seen the sizzle reels that the Chiefs have been doing for all their media stuff, and he's in a Chiefs jersey, but we have not seen this man play. And like, I think Justin Ross to me feels like just a cherry on top. Having another player like him, if he's able to play at a quality level, it's not a guy that maybe is like from a roster construction perspective isn't like, isn't it's still, you still got to figure some stuff out to keep him, because I don't think he's going to be a huge special teams factor. But it speaks to the fact that we're still having these conversations. He's still making plays. He's still getting reps with the one. He's still getting opportunities like that. And this is like a game setting. We're going to get to see like what that looks like when Justin Ross takes the field in a real capacity.
Yeah, I mean, we've seen every highlight in the book from him now, and making contested catches, winning at the catch point, gaining some separation, getting vertical on a couple of plays, and that's very positive. He looks healthy, or as healthy as he's going to look now. Like I feel like this is what we're going to get from this guy, and that's great. Like what we've seen so far. I think that we're reading a lot into the fact that he has taken some reps with the first team, and people are getting really excited at, oh, that's wide receiver one, or oh, this guy is immediately going to come in, have 50 catches for 500 yards and whatever. No, we still need to keep the expectations low here. As they rotate guys in, that first team is MVS, Justin Watson, and Skyy Moore. Then they're bringing in Rashee Rice. Then they're bringing in Richie James. Then you see a big gap there when you start seeing guys like Justin Ross. He is still showing way better than I think anybody wanted to. I am very excited to see him, because this man deserves to put on a football uniform again and take the field. Like everything that he's been through, all the injury history and everything like that, he deserves a spot on an NFL roster. I think that he's got a really good inside shot at making the 53 for the Chiefs here, but it's just going to be, regardless of what he does, Sunday's game is a massive moment for him and his career. And even if he doesn't have any catches, any targets, anything like that, I think it should be celebrated for what he's been able to do to recover and get back on the field at the NFL.
Yeah, and just, I think, rounding out the rest of the receiver conversation, like, it's just, I don't know if we're going to get clarity. Like, I don't think we're getting clarity on how that room shakes out this week, but I do think it's going to help identify the strengths that Andy Reid can exploit in some of these guys. I think it'll go some way in helping that a little bit. And that's what I'm kind of excited to see. Any other big things on the offensive side of the ball before we move to the defense?
I mean, I think the only other story that we need to kind of keep an eye on that may help determine some of the rotation and some of the roster construction is at the tight end position. We have kind of assumed that they're going to keep 4 tight ends because they did last year.
Don't have a fullback.
Don't have a fullback. A lot of it makes sense to keep 4 tight ends. I don't know if they will. And seeing how much 12 personnel they play, seeing how often they rotate out their tight ends, seeing who's playing deep into the fourth quarter, it may tell us a lot there. If we still got Blake Bell playing into the fourth quarter there, I think that tells you a little bit about maybe they're comfortable with 3. And so a lot of the roster construction conversations, we just kind of thrown in 4 tight ends is, yeah, it's probably going to happen. We might get a little insight on that in this week's game with maybe a little more 11 personnel. So
I'm going to throw this out here a little bit. And it's not a on-field discussion for week 1, but I've been thinking about this a little bit when it comes to the tight end position. Because you're right. I'm not, I don't know. I don't know what it's going to look like, right? I don't know if they're going to keep 4. And I think about Blake Bell. And I wonder if Blake Bell is a guy that you can put on a practice squad. I wonder if he's a Austin Ryder kind of thing where we've seen, like, it's the same thing. Austin Ryder, people forget, like, he was the center for a Super Bowl team, and he was chilling on the Chiefs practice squad last year. And I kind of guess that's probably what he's going to do again this year. I wonder if Blake Bell's the kind of guy that you can have and hold on a special. I mean, he's getting older. Like, I'm not talking about 2 years ago, Blake Bell. Right. And so I just wonder, I'm kind of wondering if he might be one of those guys you put on the practice spot, him and Bushman, you put him on the practice squad, call him up as needed. If they find a team, great. But we say, and we're looking at this roster, and I agree, there's definitely some, hey, that guy could get swiped kind of candidates, but I mean, it's not going to be I mean, there's not that many. It doesn't happen very often. So I don't know. I think it's going to be interesting to watch. I have one other thing I want to just talk about real quick before we move on. Deneric Prince, same kind of snap count watch, but also like I'm just excited to see him in a Chiefs jersey running like a bat out of hell.
Deneric Prince, like, listen, never bet on preseason games. Just don't do it. I kind of want to take the over on Deneric Prince. Just whatever it is, rushing and receiving. Like, I feel like he has a chance to play a lot this Sunday, and is the type of guy that if he breaks through the front line of a third string defense, you ain't catching him. So I don't know. I just, again, don't bet on preseason football because you never know what coaches are going to do. But also, that's one that I might actually do.
Is that even something you can bet on?
I don't know. I haven't looked.
Okay.
I should. If I can, I'm going to.
Oh, that's interesting. I just remember that Derek Carr is going to be in the building again. There's like no way. There's no way the Saints can win, I guess. That's yeah.
Well, it's at their place, Kent. So maybe they could win.
Derek Carr might have blocked me on Twitter just now. I'm not sure. We're going to take a break. We'll be back to talk about the defense right after this.
Thanks for listening to KC Sports Network. Make sure you download our new app. Find it on the App Store or Google Play. Just search KC Sports Network.
Hit the like button, hit the subscribe button. Feel free to leave a 5-star review. We always appreciate all those wonderful things that help support KC Sports Network. Y'all are probably getting real sick of me asking those questions. Craig's taking a sip of his water right there. It might not be water because he's having to deal with me tonight.
Just vodka. It's just straight vodka.
Okay. I figured as much. That's okay. Let's talk about the defense though, as we're previewing this game. I don't know where do you want to start, Craig? Like, what's the big, most pressing thing for the defensive side of the ball that's the burning? What's the burning question for you with this Saints game? Craig has. Oh, you back?
I'm back. Sorry about that, everybody.
I was just asking you what your biggest burning question is about this defense. Where's the direction you want to start this thing for Chiefs Saints?
It's the defensive line. Like, that's the biggest burning question is what's going to happen on the defensive line.
Hey, by the way, quick sidebar. Did you see some of the more the cryptic tweets today?
Oh, and Chris Jones clearly getting on or posting a picture of getting on an airplane.
Yeah.
Who knows if it's an old one? Who knows if it's him flying out of MCI, trying to show that he's leaving Kansas City? Who knows if it's him flying into Kansas City? His agent's even getting in on the action now. He did say that, I'm here for one more year. I'm not a fortune teller. I don't know what's going to happen. Let's just make it count. I feel like with the kind of the flurry of activity today with all of that stuff, I feel like Chris Jones is on his way to camp soon. I'm not going to make any predictions about contract or anything like that. I just feel like he's going to show up soon. It would be super awesome if he was, back in St. Joe, before they go and take this trip to preseason week 1. He's not going to play preseason week 1. I don't think that he would have played preseason week 1, even if he was at camp the entire time. But yes, there was a little more Chris Jones stuff. We'll see what it is. I want to see the rest of the defensive line. I want to see Keandre Coburn. I want to see Derek Nottie. I want to see what Turk Wharton looks like if he gets to play at all. Hopefully he does. They're taking it easy with him. Let's see what comes out of that. And then, obviously, all of those young pass rushers, like they eschewed some of their veteran leaders and Frank Clark and Carlos Dunlap and, guys that they've brought in over the years to try and bring up the level, bring in these veterans to help coach the young guys. They're gone. They're just saying, hey, guess what? Mike Dana, you're going to be the elder statesman. You're going to be the one that's leading the group here. See what George Karlaftis in year 2 looks like. See what Felix Anudike-Uzomah looks like. Does he have a little more in his repertoire than he did at K-State? Are we seeing that growth already? What does BJ Thompson look like with a little more weight on him when he gets to throw hands for real against an offensive tackle? Like, there are so many fun things to watch on this defensive line that it's going to take me a few times watching through this game, because I'm certain the first time I'm just going to be laser focused on that front four, not watching, the rotation in the back seven there as much, because there's so many questions that I want to see some answers, even if they're not definitive in week one.
Yeah, like I know the Chris Jones stuff is like the dominant storyline, but the defensive ends and so much volume of defensive ends that you could see maybe making the roster. Like, and Malik Herring, Josh Kando having strong showings. Truman Jones is another interesting guy. BJ Thompson, haven't heard much about him. Seeing some of these guys maybe separate themselves from, maybe the pack as far as the conversation's concerned. I think some of the more locked in guys, but when it comes to those guys I just mentioned, it's a couple of them make it, 3 of them make it. Who knows how many of them actually make it? They've got to start separating themselves now. This is your opportunity to. BJ Thompson has to show that he's got that special burst up the arc and the ability to bend that's going to keep him around this year. Malik Herring and Josh Kendo, he has all the talent. He's just got to kind of put it all together physically or mentally. And he's got some interesting physical traits. They've held on to Malik Herring forever. And then Truman Jones, like another guy that, he was I think comped him to Mike Dana as far as like a style of player where, he's an edge player, can do a little bit of the dirty work, was lined up multiple spots at Harvard.
They
I don't
loved
know.
him. It's that sort of stuff. Yeah.
Like it sounds weird, but like I'm just, and obviously like I'm excited about Felix, getting to see Felix, but like just like these younger rotational defensive ends that are maybe a little bit buried at the bottom of the depth chart are the guys that I'm most excited to kind of see. And I know it sounds weird, but I want to see if anybody can separate from the pack.
You want to see it because there's a lot of question marks about that. We spent the better part of this offseason talking about, should they add somebody to not just the wide receiver room, but the defensive line room? Like, it was a kind of a given there for a little while that Frank Clark was just going to come back. And then when Frank Clark signed with the Broncos, it was just kind of a given. Well, Carlos Dunlap will come back. Andy Reid coming out and saying, we feel pretty good there. But it's time to see what they feel pretty good about. And if those questions will be answered, in live stuff. Like, it's one of those things. Yeah, you hit the bags really well. That's going well. Your drills are going pretty well. But when push comes to shove, you need somebody out there. And Charles Omenihu missing 6 games at the beginning of the year is a big blow, because that's when they're going to want to lean on some more veteran presences. So I'm just kind of paying attention here, checking the level that they're at, seeing how comfortable some of these guys look running around there. Again, it's not doom and gloom if they don't look great, but this position, maybe more than even wide receiver, might be one where we see a little movement after preseason week 1. If they don't like what it is, hey, guess what? Carlos Dunlap's still out there. Maybe they do go ahead and say, hey, we're not as comfortable as we thought here. So it's kind of time for all these guys to go out there and show whether or not they are deserving of that roster spot and whether or not this team needs to make another move, a low money move, but another move nonetheless.
Well, you have to have money to do that. So we'll see what happens with Chris Jones there. How many, just like where are we at with the edge group? Do you think they keep 6?
I honestly
on the initial 53.
It's tough because Charles Omenihu won't count.
Right. That's what I'm saying.
Right,
outside of Omenihu on the initial 53. Yeah.
So outside of Omenihu, it's Dana, it's Karlaftis, it's Felix. Very confident in those 3.
Kando,
I
BJ,
think Malik Herring is going to be on this roster. I just do. They've trusted him especially in rundowns, short yardage situations, and he's been good in those. I don't want to make it sound like, they're just throwing him out there. He's been pretty good in those, and maybe that frees you up to have more of a designated pass rusher because you got a guy who can win on early downs. So a Malik Herring, and then BJ Thompson, I feel like is not going to clear waivers.
No,
those 5 I think are pretty strong. Does Josh Kando push hard enough to make a 6th? Does Truman Jones push hard enough to make a 6th? Like, those are the big questions there. I feel pretty good about those first 5, though, making it on the initial 53. And then they're going to kind of check the temperature when it's time for a Minihue to come back.
The cornerback room feels a little not unsettled because, like, I think you know the names, but it also feels like a couple new names have entered the chat. You're seeing Nick Jones and Echo Boye-Odo, and they're seeing snaps over the likes of a Joshua Williams or a Jalen Watson, and it's interesting, right? You've seen the Chiefs do this in the past. You've seen them maybe employed as a tactic to help motivate some young guys, but you've also just seen them do it. And so if they're earning them, they're earning them. I don't know how much to read into, the Nick Joneses and Echo Boye-Odo getting snaps, but I'm super excited to see them. And I think it's like a holistic look at the cornerback room. It's okay, what's going on with the second year guys? And it's what are these first year guys doing that's intriguing the Chiefs so much, right? So it's like a double-edged sword. It's two questions, and it's very exciting. I can't wait. Like, that's one of the it sucks that it's gonna be hard to watch those guys and in their entire body of work on broadcast film. But man, I'm excited to get a look at these guys and see just kind of both sides of that coin, I guess.
Yeah, if the first three corners on the field aren't Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, and Joshua Williams, because L'Jarius Sneed is still nursing an injury and should not play in this game at all. But if it's not those three, that catapults to one of the biggest stories coming out of here. Like, that means something pretty significant there in their rotation. Yes, Nick Jones has been rotating in as a slot corner. We'll see what that means. We'll see when he comes in. We'll see if Trent McDuffie stays on the outside, or if they decide that they're going to, take guys off and bring Nick Jones in as the slot corner. Lots of question marks for those young DBs. They've got this room that's fairly solid. Like, I think we all believe that, L'Jarius Sneed, Trent McDuffie, Jalen Watson, or Joshua Williams, one of those two, those are the guys. And that's really good front line.
I did until Jalen and Joshua, whatever's going on there.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they've tried those guys out. I think we all remember, Kent was a big herbivore, Herb Miller. They tried some stuff out. And
herbivores unite, baby.
We'll see if they try it out. These are young enough players, though, that I think that they want to keep building on it. Like, we've talked about it a lot. They ran a lot of static cover 2 last year. There wasn't a lot in the playbook that they were really tapping into until later on in the year. They need to add to that. And so I think we've seen maybe some less than positive kind of, vibes about some of those second year guys as they've added more. I mean, Steve Spagnuolo's alluded to, there's, some guys out here that are just kind of reverting to old habits. And so they're mixing things up to try and maybe snap some of these guys into place, because, I mean, those three should obviously feel very confident going into year 2, coming off of a Super Bowl victory, having the kind of season that they did. But bringing in this other competition is incredibly important to keep them focused and to keep them learning, especially when he wants to continue to add to the book. Now, Kent, I will say this. I think Echo and Nick Jones both coming into the equation a little bit here feels very Dave Toub to me. Feels like, hey, I really like these guys. Like, maybe they're going to be my starting gunners, or maybe they're going to play this vice role for me a lot more. I want to see what they've got, because I'd like to keep them both. And if y'all like them enough on defense, I'm going to put the flag in the ground and say, hey, I want to keep them both. So I'm keeping an eye on that a little bit too. It may be that they're just trying to cycle them through because Uncle Dave wants them.
That's a good thought. And I'm sure they're going to have to sort that situation out here pretty quick. I mean, Najee Johnson's a tough loss. He really is. Tough. It's from a special teams perspective. And I mean, he was showing some really positive signs on the defensive side of the ball too. So it's a bummer that we're not going to get to see him this year, and we'll see what the kind of the repercussions of that are from all that. Okay, so anything else on defense before we move on here?
Yeah, I'm looking to see how much Brian Cook is in control out there. They have spoken a lot about him in camp, about how he's calling plays, about he's kind of directing traffic back there, and it's coming very naturally to him. I think we all just kind of naturally assumed that Justin Reed was going to have that role and Justin Reed was going to do some of that stuff. That doesn't take anything away from Justin Reed. I think we're just all used to the high-paid safety is the guy that's calling it. That's what Tyrann Mathieu, who is going to be on the opposite sideline this weekend, that's what he did. That's what Eric Berry did. Now you got Justin Reed in here. That doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Derek Johnson talks about it all the time, that he liked having some stuff taken off of his plate so he could play faster. He liked a guy like Josh Mauga next to him that was calling some of these plays. That doesn't mean that DJ is just standing there quietly. If you watch any of the defensive breakdowns, he'll tell you otherwise. But having some of that off his plate so that he could set up to be more of a playmaker role, that may mean something for Justin Reed, and we'll get to that in the future in some of these other games. But I want to see how much he's directing traffic, Brian Cook, how much he's, in control of the defense, how much they're relying on him in the secondary. It is a young secondary. If he's already stepping into that role as kind of a leader on the back end, that's huge for a guy that we all he was drafted last year and we're like, okay, cool, high football character. He's a hitter. We get it. We understand some of the reasons why. If he's stepping into that leader role already in the secondary, that's an even bigger, kind of land in a second round pick than maybe any of us could have predicted.
Love it. I think that's a great point. And I guess it's kind of talking a little bit about earlier. It's like some of these guys don't have to stop getting better and improve and grow. And that was what was so exciting about last year is you saw established NFL players from a rookie class, and a lot of them be part of a Super Bowl winning team, make plays. I mean, Joe Burrow was, I think, touched the hands of all but one defensive back that the Chiefs drafted last year in the AFC Championship game. So it's exciting. It's and Brian Cook's, I think, one of those guys that next step, it could be we were excited, you're glad to have him year one, and then all of a sudden year two comes along and okay. So they got another
they
dude.
loved him.
Exactly.
They loved him. And lots of other NFL teams loved him as well. We heard that. The Chiefs and multiple people that we've talked to from other teams or beat writers for other teams basically said, if that dude was healthy, he was not there. Teams loved him that much. We may find out why.
I am also, real quick before we get out of here, I'm excited about Leo Chenal. Just seeing his continued growth and development, his confidence, his understanding of coverage, his movement skills, all those kind of things. I think there's a role for Leo Chenal. I think he's another one of those Brian Cooks where you're going to kind of be stunned to see him grow and take another step. That's what's so exciting to me. So I'm very much looking forward to Leo Chenal. Anybody else for you, Craig?
No, Leo Chenal's a big one right there as well. From all accounts, it sounds like he's moving more fluidly. And he was already a guy that was a good athlete. If he's moving more fluidly there, it kind of makes things easier to drop those guys into coverage from the Sam linebacker role and, have him rotate out there. I'm looking for Jack Cochran. I think that there is a position open on this team for kind of that last linebacker spot. We'll call it the Darius Harris spot for lack of a better term here. I think there's a position there for a special teamer. And I think that they want a guy that's young and can kind of do some of the things that, that they just kind of want. It's just going to do the dirty work, going to show up and make everybody better as not a practice squatter, but, the backups back up there that can play all of those spots, a la Ben Neiman, except he's not going to be in the dime. So I want to see what he looks like. I think he's probably the most likely candidate to jump into that role. But we'll see. Maybe another guy jumps over him, and if he does not play particularly well, if he's off his game.
All right, Craig, the moment we've all been waiting for. It's time to predict this game. What do you got?
What?
We did it last year.
I actually
doing
think
it this year.
I know. I don't know why.
Because it's fun.
I think the New Orleans Saints are actually going to play their starters for a little while, and it makes sense for them to do so because Derek Carr's new. I think they're not going to play Alvin Kamara. He's going to be suspended at the start of the year there. try and figure out how Derek Carr looks with Chris Olave, with Michael Thomas, figure out how he's comfortable calling things. Like, it's one thing to do it in practice, but it's another to try and, hit the seam, when everybody's going full speed. So I'm very curious to see how much they play. If they play a lot, we may see the Chiefs' deep second team playing against the New Orleans Saints first team. That has happened in multiple preseason games under Andy Reid, which could lead to maybe them running away with it a little bit. I don't know. Shane Buechele has apparently not looked great in camp, so I'd like to predict a Shane Buechele big comeback at the end of the game. But I will say that the Saints go ahead and they win this one because they play their starters for way longer. Hell, we don't even know if Patrick Mahomes is going to play in this one. So I'm going to say that they eke this one out because the Chiefs don't quite have enough with their third stringers to make it up.
Yeah, I could see the Saints playing their starters a little bit more. I'm with you. And the Chiefs might be playing with their second best group. But their second best group is good enough. We'll talk to you all after a thrilling 19-18 Chiefs preseason 1 victory. Catch you later.
Big Ten football, baby.